Okay, we're into an episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. I have a really cool update for you from the brand Depancel. And if I mispronounce the French name, well, c'est la vie. So a little bit about them. They're, of course, a French-based enthusiast-run brand. First launched back in 2018. And originally, the founder, Clement, created Depancel with the desire to combine his two passions, watchmaking and automobiles. Now, in terms of this type of watch, this is a chronograph. Some key characteristics inside when you're looking for a chrono. Of course, you're going to want to see external pushers to activate timing functions, multiple subdials to measure elapsed time, often featuring additional scales depending on that subgenre. In this case, of course, motorsports. This is their Allure model, which is a manual chronograph and the blue dial configuration. And it's inspired by the golden age of motor racing. The Allure chronograph manual 39mm is a passionate celebration of an era when freedom and madness reigned supreme on the racetrack. And of course, these are assembled in France. These go for $650 direct from the brand. And a big shout out to Depancel for sending this particular piece in for me to share with you all. Some things off the top of the head about a 39mm diameter, and it's powered by the mechanical Siegel ST1901. So a lot to like here. I have to say I'm very impressed with the build quality, and I'm looking forward to kind of diving right in. So with that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. All right, guys, check this out. This is a handsome piece. I love the color play here. There's so much different textures as well as colors there that are playing really well off of each other. You can see multi kind of levels to the dial. You can see there's a slight little tint to even the loom there. I wouldn't call it necessarily like a patina, but it does add a bit of color and warmth to the dial, which I can absolutely appreciate. Now, in terms of the dimensions, 39mm in diameter, 13.3mm thick, which for a mechanical chronograph is actually quite svelte, 45.7mm lug to lug, all stainless steel, brushed and polished. You can see some nice polished accents in terms of the finishing there. Nice sharp transitions. Of course, not sharp to the touch, but sharp to the eye. Look at that there. Nice and clean. You can see a nice little bit of extra badging there on the side, and even a little extra in terms of the crown, which is nicely signed, and then nice clean pushers, and of course this movement in the rear. Now, the interesting thing about these Siegel movements is there's actually quite a wide range of watches that these have been in. I've seen these in very, very cheap watches and more expensive watches, so I think that can definitely be a point of contention for a lot of folks. But I will say the grade of movement that they used here looks very good and very clean, and of course these are assembled in France, so they do go the extra mile in terms of QC, and I have to say that I'm quite impressed. Now, getting into some of the details here, this sapphire crystal is double domed, and it does have an inner air coating. This has, of course, a nicely fixed and polished bezel there, which I think flows in terms of, you know, the little hump and then the little roundness there. It all just goes together really well without being too singular in terms of following the curvature of the case. It's nice that it does break up a bit of the lines here, which does help that mid case pronounce and render as a little bit thinner to the eye, versus sometimes when things kind of all flow together too well, it almost seems like just a big old hump on the wrist. Here you're going to see nice clean delineation between each kind of plane and each line as you're appreciating it. So I think that's just a little smart little add there from an execution standpoint. Now, in terms of the crown, as we mentioned, it is a signed crown, but it's also push-pull, right? Which you would expect for a manually wound movement. Man, look at that dial. It's wanting me to talk about it, but we got to get through the movement first. So the mechanical movement, guys, is going to be an ST1901, so 45-hour power reserve 3 hertz sweep in terms of it having that 21,600 vibration per hour beat rate. This is based on the vintage Swiss Venus 175 movement, and it is non-hacking, although if you kind of backpedal on it, you can basically get the hand to go back and you can kind of trick it into hacking. So if you're used to watches that don't hack, that is something that is a trick that you may or may not know, and you can always use that. So no big deal there. Of course, it would be nice if it had hacking, but honestly, for this movement, it's not the end of the world. I mean, you got to think not too long ago, before 2021, the moon watches were selling without hacking seconds. So I think this one will be okay at just $650. Now, getting into that dial there, guys, let's just, that is handsome. So stepped satin dial, because there is a lot of different brushing. Some of it's vertical, some of it's radial, circular. It all looks really great there. No date. So as cluttered as these dials can be, one thing you don't have to worry about is the afterthought of how to shoehorn a date in, which I think a lot of you will appreciate. You have applied indices. And then there is an unspecified lume, or the specified superluminova, which I'm thinking might be C3 just because of kind of the tint that's in that in the lume here in the kind of the daylight situation there. This is water resistant to 5 atmospheres or 50 meters, which isn't terrible, but it also isn't great. I mean, I'm somebody who really believes in 100 meters of water resistance in terms of just basic robustness, not necessarily for water sports or anything like that, but 5 atmospheres, it's better than nothing. It's better than 30, which is just splashing. So I have to say, yeah, not too bad, especially when you think about the price. And of course, the mission of this particular watch, it's really meant, again, to be a motorsports watch. So it's, this is a watch you're going to wear when you're going for a drive, not necessarily going for a swim. Now, in terms of the lugs, 20 millimeter lugs, which are great. And you can see it has this beautifully perforated leather strap there with a nice pin buckle there, but you do have the choice of a deployant buckle if you want. I think this pin buckle is nice and clean, nicely milled, even has, of course, a little extra finishing there, little high polished sections amongst, kind of breaking up the lines on that satin brush. And I think it looks good, guys. Check that out. Even on the underside, you're going to get quick release spring bars. You're even going to get a nice kind of softer underside there, which is nice. You even do have a couple different options, black, blue, or brown strap. And these all do taper down about 2 millimeters to 18 millimeters at the tang buckle. And yeah, this is a very good looking one. Did I do this yet? Oh yeah. Boom. Let's do it on this side. Okay, if I can, there we go. There you go. That's it. Very clean, very nice, obviously. Nice to look at. Of course, if you get in super, super close there, you're going to start seeing the fact that this is a little bit more industrially finished. But at the end of the day, it's a testament to these movements that they're still so widely used and popular. So just a good design. You can see very nice column wheel right there. So very, very cool, very clean. Again, the engagement, nice and crisp. Quite mechanical and quite good. So with that said, let's actually get it on the wrist and see how it wears. Okay, guys, as you can see on my 7.5-inch wrist, this just looks perfect. Wow. Check that out. Very nice. Get it to focus there. There we go. Very clean, beautiful lines. Of course, if I do get my wrist a bit too close to the camera lens, you're going to notice there's a bit of perspective distortion and the watch is going to feel a little bit bigger. It's kind of like when you're trying to take a wrist shot to post on Instagram, you put your phone a little bit too close, and guess what? It makes the watch look really large. So really what you want to do is keep this nice and low, and then instead of having it close, I'll just bring the shot in a little tighter by zooming in. And what you'll notice here now is the change of perspective is you're going to see this looks nicely centered now. Not oversized, but you're still getting to see those nice details. Check that out. Nice mix of finishes there. Very clean. Of course, the autofocus is a little slow, so pardon that. If I can get it to, there we go. Bam. Very nice profile, guys. Nice little details. I love the color play. Again, this is just very, very handsome. Orange, blue, the brown. I mean, that very nice pale silver, even the font used. This is all stylistically very, very well done. And you can see very robust pin buckle there, beautifully milled. And it even has a bit of a drape around the strap itself, right? So just again, that extra level of thoughtfulness and robustness, even though this is, you know, a relatively affordable, a mechanical chronograph under $1,000. That's pretty good. And you're getting things like sapphire, and all that. And even the extra level of the fact that they do the assembly locally, not just to say that, hey, France assembly is better than any other area, but the fact that their brand is local to France and they do the assembly there on site just means that they have a little bit more control over, that process. So I think it's done really well. And, the last watch from them I reviewed was really nice in terms of the quality. This one definitely sings as well in terms of the quality. Look at the finish on the dial. I mean, yes, you can find watches with these movements that are going to be quite a bit cheaper, but they're also going to feel a ton cheaper and look a ton cheaper, which I say here, this actually looks and feels a lot more expensive than it is. Wow, this I almost am wondering if they could have charged more if they would have just had a closed case back, so you couldn't really judge the movement and you can kind of forget and just remember that, oh well, this is just a, if they told you it was a clone Venus movement versus a Seagull movement, I feel like from a marketing perspective it might have even worked more into their benefit, but nice bit of transparency from Depancel. So with that said, let's actually get it off the wrist, set up for some loom shots, low light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. Hey, this is why I kind of wondered if it was C3, because the loom is actually very nice. Check that out. And it doesn't really need to be very strong. I mean, if you really think about it, of course, chronographs, they're not really known for strong loom. I mean, really the only watches that need strong loom are going to be dive watches, because you're going to be, in darker, dimmer areas, right? Versus being out in the open, or even if you're out somewhere at night, there's going to be lights and whatnot. So, but I will say, really nice surprise to see pretty well done loom there. But one thing I always like to work in is a bit of a low light transition, because John is going to be out in the middle of the field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming in and out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So it is nice to see what these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting. They may even include a bit of harsh lighting, which typically could expose any types of production defects. But all you're going to see here is actually some really well executed. Look at that dial finishing. Look at the case finishing, the transitions. Very, very clean and well done. Again, I would say that they're really building a name for themselves in terms of the level of execution. So stylistically, some of their models might not always speak to you, especially if you're not really into motorsports or vintage motorsports in particular. But I will say you will be pleasantly surprised by the build quality of this cool little French micro brand. And look at the dial play, the light play, it's nice, but it's not distracting. So when this is on your wrist, it's always going to be legible. Look at how legible everything is in terms of the contrast of all of that dial information. And the nice thing is it doesn't feel cluttered. It feels really nicely thought out and really handsomely appointed. Whew, this is such a great looking watch. I'm blown away what Depancel is able to do for the money. Wow. Okay. So yes, aesthetically very pleasing to the eye, and in terms of the engagement with the piece, it's even nice to work with. It does have a nice mechanical movement. No, it's not the most high end, but you know what? it also doesn't cost the most high-end price. The additional money you're paying for this movement that does feel a bit pedestrian, I would say definitely feels like it goes into the case finishes, into the dial finishes, into the choice of crystal, getting that sapphire with that anti-reflective coating and a nice cut of sapphire at that with a double dome to it, almost a bit of a box dome. So it just is very handsome. Even the strap, this isn't a throwaway strap. This is a nice strap. It even has that cool little threaded, French flag colorway to it. You can see there on the upper side of the watch, and I think it looks great. I think it's really well done. So closing thoughts, guys, on the wrist, perfectly sized and well proportioned. It doesn't sit too tall on the wrist, and visually the dial still feels full while remaining uncluttered, which is a nice plus on a watch like this, because a lot of times that's really a balance that designers are going to fight with. In terms of model variants, it's also available in a pale silver dial option with black and orange accents, so definitely check the links in the description for that. Also, in terms of comparable models, I mean, motorsports themed watches, I feel like they don't get enough coverage considering how many watch enthusiasts are also automotive enthusiasts. But I think this brand and model really stand out. I think for the level of design paired with the excellent execution. Like, this is a really well done piece, and it's really well designed, really well executed, well appointed. Sure, it'd be nice if it had like a Salida movement inside of it, but then you'd be, looking at a watch that costs $1,800 instead of $650. So although of course they could have stepped it up, and I think they wouldn't have had to, I don't know, physically they would have had to change anything else, but I think in terms of the actual execution, you and interacting with this watch, if you had a Swiss movement in there and it did cost more, I feel like they don't have to do anything else to the rest of the package, right? They could improve the movement and charge more for it, but the dial, the crystal, the pushers, all that is already, well above in terms of the cost, right? $650. You're already feeling great about this one. And if they did do it, if they did offer it with an upgraded movement, I would definitely be wanting to check that out. But again, not everybody wants to spend a ton of money on watches. Some people just like smaller collections, that are going to be more attainable. So there's nothing wrong with that. So for me, guys, bottom line, this clean little mechanical chrono does a great job capturing that vintage motorsports aesthetic while also steering clear of the homage territory. And it even manages to elevate the movement choice, with this kind of genre leading fit and finish quality. So yeah, I think they did a great job here. Okay, guys, now as I was packing things up, I did notice there was a little bit of dust on the crystal that I had to, of course, dust off. And I wanted to just make sure we ended the segment on a high note. I mean, look at how clean this piece is. You can see the dust is not on the dial, was on the crystal, and you can see this crystal is just really well executed, very sharply done in terms of the doming there, dome on the under, dome on the over, so you're not going to get a whole lot of distortion until you start getting into really, really harsh angles. But this thing is very cool. So again, with that said, guys, let me know what you all think down in the comments below. If you like the video, please do a like. And if you're not already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.